Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my videos in my ranking series where I share with you specific categories of makeup and give you my top 10. So today we're doing powder. We're gonna jump right in. These videos can be long just because I'm sharing with you my favorites. I have so many honorable mentions in this video, so that is also gonna take us some time to get through. There are so many good powders on the market, both affordable, high-end. You name it, you'll find a powder in your budget that's gonna work for you. I have so many catered to oily skin type, dry skin type, aging skin. You are going to find a powder in this video. I do not have perfect skin. We film in natural light in my videos, and when I do my tutorials, you can see I have pores, texture, and you can really see how powder transforms makeup. Powders for me smooth my texture and set my face. Also, they can either mattify me or give me a glow depending on what I'm using for. I also use them to set my concealer for my eyeshadow application. I have a lot of uses for powder, so let's get into this video and let me share with you the powders that you will absolutely love. Some ranking videos is hard to place. This one wasn't for me. These ones really fit their spots in my opinion. But I'm gonna start with my honorable mentions. Some of them I don't think they even make anymore, but I figured if you use some powders that I do, this will help you kind of decide what I like. Honorable mention number one is my Maybelline 16-hour wear powder. They do have a 24-hour one, which I don't think I've tried yet, and I'm not sure if they still make the 16-hour one. That one's really good if you like Charlotte Tilbury but want more coverage. Then I have the NARS Soft Matte Advanced Perfecting Powder, which I really like for setting underneath my eyes, and I have the shade Creek. So this one's really smoothing for underneath the eye area. I've almost hit pan on this one, and it's a pretty recent powder to me. The Dior No Powder Powder. Are they reformulating this? Is it gone forever? This was one of my favorite powders to set the face but not add coverage and just to smooth out my skin and my pores. It was a really lightweight. My most lightweight powder was this. Unfortunately, it would always hard pan, so I just can't put this in my top 10 because one, I don't think they make it anymore. And two, because it just hard pans so easily, and I hated that about that powder. I still loved it enough to scrape off the hard pan. Then this is another one, I don't know if they make anymore, but it's the YSL Soufflé d'Eclat powder. I'm not saying that right, I know that. But this one was also really good for smoothing the skin, for brightening my under eye. And I just love how mattified this made my skin look, but not heavy. It was a really beautiful powder. The One Size powder is really good if you have pores and texture because Patrick Starr created this powder for his skin. And I find his powders just really work for mine too because I have pores and texture. This is another one of my honorable mention unsung heroes. It's from Sigma. And if you know, you know. You've tried this. It is so good. It is their Soft Focus Setting Powder in Vanilla Bean. I love this for that soft focused effect on the skin. It's super smoothing, and that's why this is an honorable mention for me. But now we're gonna get into my top 10. All these deserve a place in my favorite powders of all time. So we're gonna start with number 10. Also, One Size. And this powder I used to have as my number one powder. It moved down to my 10th place spot just because this is a little bit more heavy on my skin than the other powders that I'm going to share with you in terms of how it looks, but it does provide beautiful coverage. I have 3 here. So that is obviously a love for me if I can warrant having multiple shades for under eye, for all over my face, to lightly contour the skin, whatever the case may be. When I'm buying a powder in multiple shades, you know I love the formula. This one isn't my favorite anymore, only because I feel like others just sit a little bit better on my skin as I'm aging. I love this when it first released, but I just feel like the needs of my skin are a little bit different right now. So that is why it's 10th place spot. But if you have porous texture, you're looking for some coverage to really smooth out the skin, you can use this as a powder foundation if you want to. I typically use this only to set my face or to touch up. This is a great one for that. So number 10. To One Size. I personally need a powder to set the concealer on my eyelid, and this one is from Rimmel. It's the Stay Matte powder. I know a lot of people love this if they're oily for all over the skin. I don't need that for my skin type, but if you are oily and looking for something to mattify the skin that is budget friendly, Rimmel Stay Matte. This I do feel like is perfect for the eyelid area if you have any sort of issue with transferring, for fading. I use concealer as my base. I always get questions about that, and I set it with this powder. I've repurchased this multiple times. I have the shade 04 Sandstorm. This is the perfect color to set my lid prior to eyeshadow. I used it today. It just makes sure nothing budges or moves and it lasts on my lids. My number 8 is going to be a lot of people's number 1s. Sorry if this disappoints you that it's in this placement, but it's still a great powder. I just have others that work better for my skin. This is the Givenchy Prism Libre powder, and I have it in the shade 4. I've used 3 as well, which I think is the more pink tone. This one has a bit more of a lavender color to it. And the only reason why this isn't higher up is because this can sometimes be a little drying on my skin, just a little bit, but I do love how it looks. You only need such a small amount. I think when I first started out with this powder and how I didn't like it as much is because I was using too much of it, which with powder is a big no. Start off with a little bit, press it on your hand, tap some off, go in lightly, and you can always go back with more. Sometimes I would dip into these loose powders and pack it on, but my application has changed, which is something that I really wanted to share with you, that for powder, it really depends on how you're applying it to the skin. And I have 2 products here that I wanted to share with you. I have these triangle powder puffs that I get from Amazon, which I use to pack powder on my skin, and that will make the most flawless look. If you want a lighter application, if it's more everyday makeup and you don't need that coverage or that really flawless, smooth, locked-in finish, I use a powder brush, and I have 2 here to share with you because if one's dirty, I need another one. This is my go-to brush for powder. It is the Hourglass powder brush. It has a small side, which is good for underneath the eye, the bigger side, which is good for all over the face. I'll use these for blush, bronzer, whatever, but for loose powder or pressed, if I'm in a pinch, I'm picking up this Hourglass brush. But most often, I use these puffs from Amazon to apply my powder, and that is something that I needed to share for powder application, because if you're applying these differently, you might not like them as much as I do, just based on application, because it really plays a big part in powder. All makeup application, but really for powder for me is how it looks like on my skin, is how I'm pressing it on my face or lightly dusting it on the face. Number 7 is a cult classic. It is the Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder. This is one of those powders for me that you can't go wrong with. I feel like a lot of people love this powder. Start off with this powder for a loose powder because it is just reliable, easy to use, it provides a beautiful finish, and it can be used underneath the eye and all over the face and give you a flawless finish. So this one, don't have any faults with. I can't tell you why it's in this place, just that all these other ones I like a little bit more than this powder. So at this point on, they're all fantastic for the reasons I will suggest. There's some that have a specific purpose, but I will let you know. But that one is just one of those ones that's tried, tested, and true. I always have it in my collection, and it's one that I can rely on and that I know is going to work for me to control any sort of shine if I need that on a really hot day. To smooth out my skin or set everything in general, it just does a fantastic job. Number 6 is my favorite powder foundation, and this is the only one that I will ever consider using all over my skin as a powder foundation, and it is from Makeup Forever. They reformulated this, and I actually like the reformulation better, and I loved the original powder foundation. This one is a better version of the one size powder to me, because you can also use that as a pressed powder, but this one, a little bit better, a little bit more coverage, a little more smoothness. The wear of this is better, and it's a little bit more lightweight for me. So that's why it beats out my one size, but it does all the things that the one size does for my skin, but just with a little bit more coverage and smoothness to it. So that's what I love about this. I can wear it all over the face, and if you use the sponge provided or a similar sort of sponge to put it on the skin, you are getting the fullest coverage powder on the market with this powder. It is so good if you need to cover stuff, and I don't find it drying either, which is really nice. I find it way more hydrating than the original formula, which is great for my skin. I'm normal leaning dry. I'd say I'm more normal right now, but I love that regardless, even if I'm dry. It's a really good powder foundation. Top 5, a lot of people's number 1. This is the Huda Beauty Loose Powder. I know a lot of people love this, but I recently found something that I like even more than this powder. So you will find out in this video. I know that's a big claim because everyone loves this for how it makes their skin look, but I think there's something even better on the market than this powder. So this one is great if you have pores and texture as well and you want to bake your face. I don't do that often, but this is a great baking powder to really lock in your makeup and give you a flawless look. It does cover pores, it really airbrushes the skin, but I have other that replace that. So moving quickly onto my 4th place spot. This is a special powder and different than anything that I've mentioned thus far. It is the Hourglass Veil Translucent Setting Powder. It's the loose version. I recently tried their pressed and I wasn't a huge fan of it myself. I know it's getting great reviews, but I much prefer this loose version. It doesn't have any coverage. It is translucent and it has this beautiful ambient glow to the skin like they do in their ambient lighting powders. It does have that sort of iridescence to it, not glitter, and doesn't emphasize pores or texture because otherwise it wouldn't make it into my top 10. I am very, very particular about my pores and texture being emphasized, and this does not do that, even though this gives your skin more of a glow. And this is my number 1 recommendation for those who have more mature skin and want something to set the face, because I wouldn't be baking or using anything too heavy. If I had more mature skin, I would be using this myself. And days that I find I'm a little bit more dry, I do reach for this more often. So that's why it's in this placement, because I love it so much for setting my skin, and I always set this loosely on the skin. So this is my brush only powder. I don't pack this on. I think it looks better with a brush, which often most powders I think look better packed on, but this one's definitely a light set, good for every day. And just to lightly set the face, give a little bit of glow. Sometimes I'll just even do this as a finishing powder, not necessarily as a setting powder, just to add that glow back to my skin. My dog is in every single one of my videos, but often you don't see her, but today she wanted to make an appearance. Mature skin, if you need a glow or as a finishing powder, this does it all in this one. So love this one for my 4th place spot. Top 3, here we go. And this is my Sephora collection powder. Great price point. It's their Micro Smooth powder, and they recently, I think, reformulated or slightly did a package upgrade. This is my new one. This is the old one. I haven't looked into the ingredients of this to see exactly what they did to this. You good? She's old. I haven't looked into exactly what changed about this, but there is a slight bit more product in the newer powder. Before it had 7 grams and this now has 8 grams, if you wanted to know. So I don't notice personally a difference in how it looks on my skin. This is like a baked version of Charlotte Tilbury powder to me. It is super silky smooth and sets my face beautifully, lightly, like a MAC Mineralized Skin Finish, which is another powder I used to love. Didn't make it into my top 10, but I like this more because it has more of a soft finish with a little bit more pigment, which I personally need. I like that extra coverage from a powder, and this does it for me for underneath my eyes or to set all over my face. So this one is a great one if you are looking for Charlotte Tilbury but on a budget, because we're gonna mention her. But I love this as my budget-friendly option, and I always forget how good this is when I try and use up other things in my collection. My Sephora collection one I used to clean up my face by adding a little bit more coverage to clean up the jaw area. And then my second place powder I used all over my skin to set everything in place. And this one is from Lunar Beauty. I fell in love with this powder because of my friend Stephanie, Babs Beauty, here on YouTube. She told me I needed to try out this powder, and boy was she right. This is something special about it. This I like more than the Huda Beauty. This is like Huda Beauty, but even more perfecting on the skin. I don't know how Manny did this powder, but truly, this smooths my skin like no other powder on the market. If you need matte and oil controlling, if you're super oily and have pores and texture, I would recommend this number 1. If you are very dry, that's the only people who I would say just to use this very lightly. Sometimes for me, I can't use this if I'm very dry just because this has a little bit of kaolin in it, which I find to be too oil controlling for my skin. Otherwise, normal or slightly dry skin, I still use this. And you can see it doesn't dry out my skin. I just look very smooth, and by adding setting spray after, it kind of brings back the healthy glow that I personally like. I don't like a fully matte look, but if you love just super matte skin, this does the best at it. Watching Stephanie's videos, you can see her put this on her skin and how mattifying it makes her skin. Flawless looking makeup from this powder. Me being more dry leaning, I always add that glow back to the skin, but this truly does the best for my pores and my texture of any powder I've ever tried on the market is this one. There's only a couple shades in this though. I have the shade Translucent Light, and they do have a pink one, which I'm really curious to test out. I still haven't purchased it. Steph does have a coupon code. I'm gonna ask her what it is because I always forget. It could be Babs Beauty, but I'll have it linked below in case you want to save a little bit of money on Lunar Beauty, because I forgot when I purchased that powder. I'm like, sorry Steph, I forgot to use your code. But she does have a code if you want to save a little bit of money. For something to replace by Huda Beauty is saying a lot, so for that to be my second place powder truly changed the game for me. However, for my #1 powder, this is my most repurchased powder to date, and I know you already guessed this. It is the Charlotte Tilbury powder. And yes, I do have some affordable options that I use in place of this that I think are just as good as this powder, but there's something about the Charlotte Tilbury that I always go back to in terms of how smooth it makes my skin. I love the ease of use from a compact powder, which I prefer over a loose. I think I had like half and half for press and loose actually in this video, and I didn't intend for that to happen at all. I just pulled what I prefer, but my #1 would be a press powder. I love the convenience of this. I love how this looks like underneath my eyes, especially because this has the perfect amount of pigment without being full coverage and looking unnatural. It just gives a little bit more coverage, sets my under eye flawlessly, makes everything last, and I don't feel it on my skin. My skin does not look powdery when I use this. I use this underneath my eyes today to set my concealer, and I just think it looks so beautiful. It is such a good powder. I have 3 shades. When you self-tan like I do, you never know where you're gonna be. Today, I used #2 underneath my eyes. I recently got new ones to refill. I go through these like crazy. If you guys watch my empties videos, you know. If you're familiar with my channel, you know how quickly I go through these. For me, always use powder. I use this powder for underneath my eyes, all over my face, for touch-ups. You name it, this powder is coming with me. This is my favorite go-to powder that I can always rely on. And I have #3 to sometimes lightly bronze up the skin depending on my coloring, or to set my whole face. It really depends on where I am in my self-tan journey. I don't know who this is calling me. Decline lookup number online. Those are my top 10 powders of all time, and also some honorable mentions which I wanted to let you know about. I'm also very open to what your #1 powder is. So if you have something you didn't see in this video and you want to tell me about, please let me know. I'm always in search of new products to try, and we can change up the ranking if I find something new that I love. So thank you guys so much for your recommendations. If you've seen my bronzer video, I actually have a new #1 because of you guys telling me to try new stuff. So thank you so much for also helping me out. As much as I try and help you guys in these videos, you also help me. So I really appreciate the community we have on this video series, helping each other out find the best products out there. So thank you so much for commenting on these videos, watching, sharing. This series has done so well because of you guys. So thank you so much for your engagement in this series and your help for me as well. Next, we'll probably get into lips, which I do not even know how I'm gonna film that video because that's gonna be the hardest category for me to do. I love lip product. I'll sort that out and get that up hopefully soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's other categories that I've missed that you wanna see, let me know in the comment section below as well, and I'd love to get to them for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have not already, I would absolutely love for you to subscribe to my channel by hitting the red subscribe button, the bell to be notified of all my future videos, and I will see you guys in my next one.